This episode of Bulletproof Cash Flow is brought to you by Realty Dynamics. Learn how people like you can build substantial passive income while creating wealth for the long term through real estate investing. Visit rdyne.com. That's RDYNE.com.
The problem today is most people aren't equipped in sales and sales skills. And there are so many levers that you can tweak along the way to optimize the process, right? Like when the lead comes in, how fast are we getting to it? Are they getting a text message from us? Are we calling, leaving voicemails? Are we calling them 3 times on the first day, 3 times the second day, and then once a day for the next 7 days? How are we making sure the lead doesn't fall through the crack? How are we making sure that we don't lose the lead in the CRM? If someone talks to them, what's the process what's the process to book the appointment? What's the process for disqualifying them?
Working because you want to, not because you have to, is financial freedom. And we want to help you create that. Welcome to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We're going to teach you how to achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host is a multifamily syndicator and property developer. He's done deals reaching into the hundreds of millions of dollars. You'll hear from experts in all aspects of real estate investment, finance, development, and management. Everything you need is right here. This is the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. And this is your host, Augustino Pintus.
Hey everyone, it's Augustino. When it comes to building cash flow and net worth, I'm convinced that real estate is the best way to do it. Now, I know we often talk about building these massive multifamily deals and very complex deal structures, but some people that are looking to grow their long-term wealth by using single family is obviously another way to do that. It's a great way to build some of that net worth and cash flow as well. Now, today's guest is an expert at doing just that. He was interested in real estate, and after finding out what real estate agents were doing for a living, he needed to make a career switch. Now, he left his corporate job at Intel as an engineer and headed into real estate, trying to get as many leads as he could as an agent. Now, since then, a lot of stuff has happened. We'll go certainly into that. But over 10 years ago, he's become exceedingly great at real estate prospecting, cold calling, and learning how to mitigate rejection in a cold call, especially when it goes sour. Now, applying these skills, he's built a real estate brokerage, a sales training business, and a title company, as well as hosting the very popular Real Estate Disruptors podcast. Now, with all that, I'd like to welcome Steve Trang to the show. Steve, buddy, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah,
really excited to share with your audience.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. Now, guys, if you like what Steve has to say, you can reach him via his contact page at stevetrang.com. We'll put a link in the description as well. Okay, Steve, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you got started in all this real estate stuff.
Yeah, so, it's so cliche, right? But like everyone else, you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you realize that your whole life you've been more or less lied to about what the right way to success or the right way with wealth is. Like just work the 9 to 5, until you're 55, 60, 65, retire and, get a Rolex and whatever, pension. And all these things were created back a long time ago when those things were viable options, but that's no longer reality. The idea of working with one company for 30 years is something that your parents could do or grandparents could do. It's not something you can do. And so, going from engineering, reading that book, realizing that this is not the path to wealth. And I always knew I was not the kind of person that could have a job forever. I always knew that I was going to eventually venture out on my own, got into real estate. And the Purple Book says, go buy rental property so you can cash flow and live off of cash flow with financial freedom when your cash flow exceeds your expenses. But I didn't do that. I got distracted because I'm an entrepreneur. And maybe if you guys are listening right now, you guys might be entrepreneurs as well. There's the advice that's given, and then there's what you execute. And I did not execute what the book said. So became a realtor. I struggled for a long time. I worked with buyers. I did short sales. I did foreclosures for Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Fannie Mae, and so on. And that worked, right? But it was a job. And honestly, if I would have made more money if I stayed at Intel versus doing that. However, I did learn a lot of valuable skills along the way. So eventually, I got into coaching, and not being a coach. That's much later down the road. But actually hired a coach, got mentored, learned how to run a business, which is key to financial freedom and time freedom. So I got into coaching, started a brokerage, and then I started buying houses on accident. And once I started buying houses, I realized, wow, like there's so much more money in actually buying houses, whether it's to wholesale or flip, than there ever would be in being a realtor. And once I came to that realization, mentally and inside, I was kind of broken. I could no longer be as patient in working with clients, right? People that were frustrated that it took too many houses to look at to buy, or homeowners like, why is my house taking so long to sell? Like your patience really reduces really fast once you start making more money working for yourself. It's I'm not sure that's the right thing, but it's the reality. Once you value your time more, it's really hard to put up with the verbal abuse from clients.
Yes. Well, especially in that line of work, because it's exactly what it is verbal abuse, right? I mean, and I'm not saying that the clients are not important, right? I'm not saying that, but at the same time too, it's like, yeah, they're leaning on you. They're wondering,
right,
why is this place selling? Why? And a lot of them, like, they're not nice about it either. They think
nice
that
and it's understandable they're not nice about it because it is an emotional process. But on top of the money being more, buying houses, than working on the realtor side, not only is the money more, but the gratitude is so much higher. When you help someone, when you buy their house, you're helping them out of a bad spot. And the fact that you help them out of a bad spot, they actually appreciate you more than if you were to list their house and sold it for the record amount in the market. So not only is it financially more rewarding, it's also more satisfying from the gratitude side, and it's more fulfilling. So there's multiple reasons to really focus our efforts on that side. And, I wish I did that much earlier, but thankfully I did find it on accident.
Right. Well, I mean, but it sounds to me like you also took advantage of coaching as well, like receiving coaching, receiving that guidance from someone, right?
Yeah. Well,
because it sounds like.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
When I first started in 2007, coaching's been around forever, right? Coaching's not a new concept. But when I started in 2007, first, the person you see before you today is the humblest version of me, which might be shocking because I'm not overwhelmingly humble, right? Like most people that know me really well are still at times surprised by the amount of irrational confidence I have. But this is the humblest version of me because when I first started, I was like, why would I ever need coaching? How much do they charge? That's ridiculous. I could just do this on my own, and the cost of failure will be like I could just risk losing $25,000 on the next flip, and I'll learn more from that than I ever get from coaching, right? Like that was the mindset. And then once you become more savvy as a business owner, and it took me 4 years to realize it, it's like, oh, I can just buy their knowledge and shortcut this whole process and compress this learning curve like this. Why wouldn't I do that from the beginning? So there's. Go ahead.
It's what though, it's funny because I think as you start becoming a sharper entrepreneur, you realize that the one thing you can never get back is time. And you said something very, very interesting there about shortcutting, right? Because people seem to think, oh yeah, I'll make the $25,000 mistake and go through 6 months of hell dealing with whatever nonsense you have to deal with, as opposed to just asking an expert, paying them for their time.
Right.
And the expert would tell you, like, for probably a quarter of the cost, don't do that deal, and here's why. Or if you do that deal, here's the actual price you should be paying, and here are the pitfalls to look out for. It's totally worth the cost of admission. But yeah, I think you're right, though. A lot of those folks, and it's funny, I see a lot of this, on Facebook, for instance, these armchair quarterbacks would say, oh, what a scam, what a this, what a that. And, usually those are not the folks that actually have a great deal of success in real estate or any business for that matter.
And there's also the appreciation component, right? Because it's hard to appreciate the value of coaching if you don't understand the value, right? So what I realize now that I didn't know back then was how much potential there is in this industry, how much upside there is. Like if your goal is to eventually quit your job and have passive income, you could do that over the course of 10, 15 years, and that's okay. But if your goal is to make an outrageous amount of money and have massive impact and have time freedom and financial freedom and basically be able to do whatever you want whenever you want, which is the goal of every entrepreneur, that is not something that, 10, 15, you can get all that in 3 years, 5 years with the right mentor. But again, you have to be, it's hard to know what's out there. So it's hard to justify paying for it. But if someone said, like, this is what you can have if you pay for this, and not just explain it, but convince me, then I would have signed up for it. But there was no way anyone could convince me, because for me, that person that started in 2007 would never believe that. That person would never think this is achievable. This is like, this is some, you're selling me a fairy tale. There's a book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, written by Gary Keller. He talks about the seventh level. Are you familiar with that book? So the seventh level agent is the one that you have agents working on your behalf, prospecting. You got administrators, you got leads coming in, you got everything is done. And you, as a business owner, are basically just looking at the dashboards, the P&Ls, the financials that you're not working on because someone else is doing it. You're just reviewing it, right? I remember reading that book, I want to say around 2008, and I was thinking, okay, well, that's just a dream. And now I have multiple businesses where that's what's happening. So it would have been hard to convince me to sign up for coaching, because I would not have really believed it. Even if you were believing in it, I would never have believed it. So that's the challenge, I believe, with a lot of people that are getting into coaching.
No, absolutely. I think that there's, aside from delivering the information, I think the other side of the coin too is that there has to be a degree of sacrifice to be made, right? And what does a sacrifice mean? Well, you may have to downsize your house. You may need to sell this beautiful giant house that you have, go into an apartment, use that capital and invest it in yourself, or invest it in a deal. And many people don't want to do that. They don't want to give up the flashy cars or anything else like that. I know people like this personally. Oh yeah, they're very comfortable. And I was one of those guys at first. I had the giant house and I had a whole fleet of cars. And it wasn't until you get into a real tough spot and you realize, you know what? I have to do this. And if I don't, I'll regret it for the rest of my life.
Right.
So that's why coaching, and that's why really becoming an expert at this business is very easy to do, air quote, easy to do, if you're willing to commit to it.
Yeah. If you're willing to
heart and soul.
If you're willing to go all in on it and fully commit. And that was the other thing too, was, when I quit my job at Intel in 2007, I always knew I could get my job back, which is why it was easier for me to quit my job. Everyone thought I was crazy to quit my job. Like, we're about to enter this recession, or it feels like a recession. Like, how could you quit your job right now? And for me, I knew that I could always go back to it. So I didn't operate with this right amount of intensity that was necessary. And it was around 2009 where I basically, like, my wife and I were, struggling financially. And she basically said to me, like, she's losing sleep. We're maxed out credit cards. We're not even paying our mortgage bills, because I'm a realtor at this time, and that was not a good time to be a realtor. And she said, as a husband, we have a responsibility to provide. So you said, you know what? Let me call my old boss back at Intel and let me see, maybe I can go back to it, right? And I went back, and I met back with my old boss. I met back with my old team members, and they said, yeah, we told you could always come back anytime, but we can't bring you on. And finally, the boats were burned. Finally. And it was that time that I was able to operate with the right amount of intensity and effort to make this work. Because at this point now I had no choice.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's a key aspect right there, right? If you can't go back, now the boats are burned.
Yeah.
It's like now you're going to get up at 5 a.m. to put in the extra work that you need to do.
Right.
Yeah. That I think, and many people operate that way because they know it's that comfort scenario, right? They know that when they wake up at 7 a.m., they can roll into the office at 8, hang out there until 5, come home, sit on their ass and watch TV and eat bonbons until tomorrow. Right. Terrible existence. I was one of those guys. So
well,
yeah, I don't.
Is it terrible though? For us, it's bad, right? But there are times because we sacrifice, we struggle, we fight for this. there are times where I think back like, man, I wish I could have been satisfied playing the PlayStation, living in an apartment, smoking a bong here and there. Like, I wish I could be satisfied with that, but I'm not. And even with everything I've got going on for me today, I'm happy. Make no mistake, right? I'm happy with my existence. I'm incredibly grateful, but I'm not satisfied. So,
Right. Yes. Yeah. And well, I think that's the difference though too, right? I think it's once you taste success, you want more of it. Right.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm the same way too. I'm the same way too. It's we just want to keep growing the business and keep the acquisition mode up, and really help others do the same thing that we're doing too. Right. And, and we do it through the podcast, we do it through education. It's one way to do it. And hopefully when this message hits other people too, they're able to take action, and maybe they don't want to sit around. Maybe they want to see some massive change in our life. This is the time to do it. Yep. Opportunity is there every single day. It's just that you have to be willing to accept it and take it. Right.
You have to want it.
Yeah.
You have to want it. You have to want the upside, and you have to be willing to pay the cost.
Yeah.
It ain't cheap.
That's right. No, but it's totally worth it, right?
100% worth it.
It is totally worth it. 100% worth it. 100% worth it. All right, but let's talk about deals now. So, how do you find deals these days? How I mean, I think there's a lady I know. She's I think she's related to the guy who founded the Ohio RIA. I think it might have been his daughter here. So she's excellent and understands how this business works. And one thing she says is that no matter what happens in every single ebb and flow of the economy, there's always an opportunity, right? So what are you doing today to find deals, and where do you see it going maybe in the next 8 months, 10 months with inflation going the way it is right now?
I appreciate this question, because I think this question, finding deals, is the single most valuable skill above all other skills. We teach sales, we go through leadership training, and so on. But sourcing deals is, right, whether you want to flip, whether you want to buy and hold, want to do Airbnb, you want whatever, wholesale, whatever it is, all those things don't happen if you can't source deals. So for us, we do two different things. We do quite an amount of cold calling, and we're doing a lot of direct mail. So we're mailing the homeowners, motivated homeowners, people that are distressed, and seeing if they're interested in selling their home. At this point, there's no rocket science behind it. We pay one company for data, we pay another company to mail it, and then we take the calls in. So if you spend enough money on marketing, you'll get the seller. So that's, I want to tell you that there's some rocket science and some brilliant minds behind this. There isn't. It's just the willingness to put in the work. So we spend money on direct mail. We spend money on the list. We cold call it. So we have a team of cold callers in the Philippines that we've hired. We have in-house salespeople, and we have a CRM to streamline and optimize all this. I think that the question isn't how to find the sellers. The question is what to do once you've got the sellers. At this particular point in time, you can watch 100 different YouTube channels to find the sellers, right? Whether it's PropStream, Investor Machine, Audantic, Batch Leads. Like, there's so many different ways to find sellers. That's not the problem today. In 8 to 10 months, maybe it will be. But right now, the problem is not today. The problem today is most people aren't equipped in sales and sales skills. And there are so many levers that you can tweak along the way to optimize the process, right? Like, when the lead comes in, how fast are we getting to it? Are they getting a text message from us? Are we calling, leaving voicemails? Are we calling them 3 times on the first day, 3 times the second day, and then once a day for the next 7 days? How are we making sure the lead doesn't fall through the crack? How are we making sure that we don't lose the lead in the CRM? If someone talks to them, what's the process what's the process to book the appointment? What's the process for disqualifying them? What's the process after we meet with them? Who's following up with them afterwards? Who's making sure that they're touched every week, every month for the rest of eternity? Like, there's so many different levers that you got to optimize and tweak, right? And it could be something as simple as like your CRM was working today, and then tomorrow the API integration is broken, or you're relying on Zapier, and Zapier decided to take a dump for 2 hours on a random afternoon, and you don't know because your systems aren't done or aren't operating the right way. So like, there's so many different places where the system can break, and that's where I think you kind of separate the average investor from the elite investors.
So really, it comes down to like step one, initiating contact, and you're using a variety of ways: phone, mail, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really matter like how. I guess you're buying the list and you're chopping down the type of person, the type of demographic that you're
Right, the
looking
avatar.
for.
We have an ideal avatar.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But then what it comes down to, it sounds like, is the talking strategy, the script, all that stuff post contact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then applying the right sales methodology to get that person over the line to, of course, help them, right? Help them get out of the deal. And then, of course, help yourself at the same time by either closing the deal. I'm assuming you're also, you're wholesaling these same deals too, right? It just depends on the asset and the deal. Yeah.
Yeah, we're either wholesaling it, flipping it, or keeping it for myself as a personal rental, right? Those are the three different strategies. The most common one is wholesaling, right? Usually more times than not, it's wholesaling. The flips
now, how do you figure out?
Go ahead.
So no, I was going to ask you, how do you figure out? Let's say, for instance, you find a deal. How do you know what to do with that deal, or how does that person on the phone, like your individual, your representative, know which strategy to apply, or do you tell them up front, we want to buy this asset, we want to flip this one? How do they?
It's really they don't know. The guys on the phone, the people that meet with a homeowner, their only responsibility is to buy it right. Just buy it right. So we buy it right, and then once we've contracted it, now we can figure out, okay, what do we want to do with this? And we can analyze it that way. But for us, our process, I'm not saying it's the perfect process, but our process is we close on it, we buy it right, and then we'll figure out the exit strategy.
Wow, nice.
Excellent. Yeah, because I mean, I think there are people that buy properties, right, and they'll justify it later on. It's like, yeah, we could pay a little more, we'll keep it as a rental, or we could pay a little more, we can turn it into an Airbnb, and it works. But if the market takes a shift or whatever, because I'm callous, right? Maybe callous isn't the right word. I'm partially broken from starting in 2007. I saw so many people go through divorce at that time. As a realtor, I saw so many realtors that were riding high with their Hummers and lavish lifestyle, and contractors that got divorced. All the contractors, because especially in Arizona, real estate is was our number one our number one industry. And so watching so many realtors get divorced, watch so many contractors get divorced, lose everything, I think you got to buy it right. And then you can figure out the exit later on, right? If it's buy and hold or whatever, that's fine. But don't overpay just so you can have rentals, because if the market shifts, you can face some challenges.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? That's the thing. I mean, so many people, I think we were talking about YouTube a second ago. There's so many of those videos too about how many guys got into 2007, 2008. They hit it, they went bankrupt, and they ended up losing their whole family over it, right? I think financial reasons is probably the number one reason why these relationships fall apart.
Yeah, so, and I had this one client. It was a contractor, and he killed it when everything went down. He invested with me, and what I noticed was he bought everything cash. Now, I'm not saying you have to buy everything cash, but what I will say is that because he bought everything cash, when everything went south, he was able to sell some assets for some cash flow to ride out the storm, but he was able to acquire assets that no one else could acquire because he was liquid, right? Because he had the resources. He didn't need to get a loan. He could just buy these properties outright. And so, and he, again, lamented, right? Like, it was sad for him to see all his friends go through this catastrophe while he was able to gobble up everything because he was running his business in a way that was able to withstand the storm. So I'm not preaching buy everything cash, but I am preaching always be prepared for when the moment shifts, when the winds change or whatever, when the sails change, whatever the term is.
It could change at any time too. It could change at any time. There's a lot of things that have happened over the last even 24 months that were not expected, and here we are, right? Who would have thought? Who would have thought? That's a whole other discussion. That's another show.
Yeah.
But so now what do you typically do then to reduce the fallout of contracts? Like, because one of the biggest things I'm sure many people, at least the wholesalers I've spoken to anyway, we get some seller's remorse, or they try to retrade you or whatever. Like, how do you really get control of those certain scenarios so it doesn't happen to you?
Well, we really focus on seller's remorse. So part of our sales training, we have 12 modules in our sales training course. One of them specifically is preventing seller's remorse. And so the way it would go is I would say, hey, John, what does this document mean to you? And you would say, oh, it's just a contract. Well, John, to me, what it means is finally able to sleep at night knowing that this is taken care of, that you can finally move on to retire in Florida close to your grandkids, or you can finally get that RV you wanted and travel the country, or you can finally go fishing over here in retirement knowing this is all taken care of. So that's the first thing. Like, right when the contract's signed, what does it mean to you? Here's what it means to me, right? Reminding them why they're selling. And John, if there's any reason why you feel maybe like this isn't the right thing to do, could you just do me a favor and let's just go ahead and cancel the contract right now. Let's go ahead and tear it up right now. And you're going to say, no. Like, I need this done, right? But by giving me the option to cancel now, you're going to be much, much less likely to cancel later on. All right. So that's the second thing. Hey, if you want to cancel, let's cancel it now. Third thing is, hey, John, is there anybody who afterwards, when you tell them that you sold your property to us, that's going to be upset or disappointed or interject in any way? And they say, well, my daughter or my neighbor or whatever. Okay, I got that. And what are you going to tell them? And they're going to say, well, I'm going to tell them, like, it's time to move on, or this is my house. I'm going to do whatever I want, whatever, right? But we're coming up with a really crappy, rough draft of a script. But now the homeowner's equipped to defend themselves later on when they say, well, why'd you sell it? Or, that person ripped you off. Versus if we don't prep them at all, and then they go meet with and they sell it, and, the daughter says, Mom, that investor totally ripped you off. And mom's going to be like, oh, no, I did get ripped off, right? So we're just giving a rough draft of a script so as to prevent them later on. And then the last thing is, and anytime between now and between the next 14, 30 days, you might get someone that's going to call you, reach out to you, and tell you that they can pay more than we offered. What are you going to tell them? And they're going to say, well, if they get a higher offer, then I guess I should go listen to it. I said, well, we have a problem here. They're asking, what's the problem? I said, well, I've made a commitment to you. I'm going to go back to my team and say, hey, we're buying Mary's house for $150,000. So make sure you put those funds aside that we don't spend it anywhere else. And on top of that, I'm going to go to my administrative team, and they're going to get all the paperwork started. And we're going to be focused on making sure we can close on time. If you're telling me you're not quite committed to me, how can I go back to my team and tell them that we're going to go do all these things? To which ideally the homeowner is going to say, well, I didn't realize how much was involved. No, I'm going to tell him Steve's my guy, and I'm committed to you. So that's what we do to prevent remorse.
Right. It sounds like you are cementing their commitment.
Resolve.
And you're also the resolve, exactly. And you're kind of like even giving them a bit of a script, because, oh my God, I've heard so many stories where the parent sells their property, a dump in most cases, to someone over the phone, and then the kid shows up, and, oh my God, you got ripped off. They're going to wholesale. They're going to this. They're going to that, and it turns to a whole drama situation. And I think that maybe the child would hold that house to a higher regard because they were raised there, or for whatever other reason, so
right.
They think it's worth more money, where really the house is worth what the house is worth. Right?
Exactly.
But they just don't look at it that way. Right. That's one of the kickers. And I think, just I guess to your point, it's understanding how to how to really strengthen that resolve to make sure they follow through. Because if you start getting wishy-washy commitments out of these sellers, you're never going to get the deal over the line. Right?
Exactly.
It all comes down to sales. Yeah, it all comes down
it's
to
sales,
sales.
and we're
That's it.
figuratively we're building a moat around the castle, and no one else is allowed in.
Yeah, that's right. So now, what sort of things are you doing then to shepherd that deal all the way to closing? Wait, so you get them on the phone, you walk through those techniques with them. So how do you make sure that the deal does make it over the line?
Well, first and foremost, is we got to buy it right. And I said this a moment ago, but I see quite a bit of people that will contract a house at a seller's price and then try to price shop later on. And me personally, I think that's unethical, right? I like to operate with high integrity. So if I tell you I'm buying your house for $150,000, I will buy your house for $150,000, even if I lose money, right? Like it's so important to me that we operate with a service first, heart of a servant mentality. So when I tell you like we're buying it, right? So I think that's the first thing. As far as, can you ask me the question again?
Oh, about your techniques to make sure it goes over the line.
Yeah. So then the second part is we do have a person in our organization who is a transaction coordinator, and her job is to talk to the homeowner and update them on a regular basis. Because I believe one of the reasons why deals fall out is that I contracted your house, I sent it to the title company, and then I go back to grinding and finding the next seller, which I understand, right? Because I've been the solopreneur boat, or I've been the smaller business boat, where you're constantly hunting, and this whole time you're not talking to the homeowner. And in their mind, if they're not hearing from you, they're thinking, oh, something's wrong, something's happening, or this isn't real. And they're kind of subtly disconnecting from you. And so you're not top of mind. Even though you have a contract, you have a written contract to buy their house, you're not talking to them, and they're thinking something's wrong. And if you don't reach out to them and give them updates, then they feel like something's wrong, and they can start looking at other options. So if our TC has to talk to them every single week, hey, how you doing? Anything new? Blah, blah, blah. By the way, here's what's going with with our purchase. Now they feel comfortable, and they know that this is going to close. So I think, and I don't blame other operators, right, for not having that piece in place, because if you're a smaller operator, like, that's a luxury. But for me, it's an absolute necessity, because I've had too many deals die because the seller got cold feet because no one was talking to them. Or, you find out prior, like 2 weeks or, a couple days prior to close, like, oh, I sold to someone else 2 weeks ago. Like, now we got to undo this mess. Right. So just talking to them on a regular basis, keep them committed, keep them engaged, keep them calm. And the other thing too is, like, just think about us. If we have something like uncomfortable I need to tell you, it's going to take a lot of effort for me to get to the point where I'll actually call you and tell you we have a problem. And by that time, I'm angry, and I'm not going to be speaking in a logical manner. But if you called me once a week, hey, Steve, here's what's going on. Any concerns I have at this point, I will volunteer it to you because you reached out to me.
Yeah.
But if I'm reaching out to you, we've got problems. So that's the other thing we do to make sure the deal's across the finish line.
Nice. Good. So now when you're helping folks get into doing what you're doing, the wholesaling aspect, are they getting access to all this technology, aside from the methodology, which is important, the technology, the CRM components, when to call them, like the whole program, like how does all that work?
Yeah. So anyone that's working in our mentorship program, we go through our entire business, like it's almost like you're buying into a franchise, right? It's not a franchise, but we want to give you everything, every tool you need to succeed. And, we don't work with a lot of people by design. We want to work with a handful of people that we can help build a business that serves them. Again, if you read the Purple Book or you want to be an entrepreneur for whatever reason, typically you do it because you want to have time freedom and financial freedom. And what happens is once you become self-employed, you don't actually have those two things initially. And there has to be a lot of pieces in place so that you can live the life that you want, the life that you dreamed about many years ago. And so when someone works with us, we do give them the entire framework that we use to run our business so that I can do whatever I want, whenever I want.
Yeah. And that's the name of the game. That's the name of the game. But to your point too, you only work with a limited amount of people. I imagine the people you do work with are indeed committed to the program. They're committed to that success. And that's a big part of really seeing it through, right? They got to be committed to it. They have to be.
Yep.
All right, Steve. Now, if I know we covered a lot of ground today, what sort of bulletproof advice would you offer to someone listening right now?
I think the single most valuable investment you could possibly make is in yourself. And you hear it's so cliche because so many people say that, right? But at the end of the day, what can someone take from you, right? Someone can steal your employees. They can seize your assets. Like in a worst case scenario, you could physically lose everything, but the one thing they can't take is you, right? Take everything away. If I had a disastrous lawsuit today and I lost everything, you better believe in 2 years I'm going to have everything back, right? So I think you are the single most valuable investment you can make because they can't take you away from you. I mean, get the tools, get the programs, get the resources and all these other things, right? To run your business, hire right. I'm not saying like don't hire people, but if you're not investing in you, then I guess let me put it another way. If you invest in you, additionally, people will follow you. Talented people, right? I have an amazing army of people around me. People will only follow you as long as you're a vehicle to their success. If they don't believe that you can help them, right, achieve their goals, or if they don't believe that you run a stable enough business that they're going to be able to make their next paycheck for the next several months or years, they will leave you. So if you're not investing in yourself, then why would anyone invest their time with you? So I think bulletproof advice, invest in you, be the best version of you, and at that point you will be bulletproof.
Love it. All right, guys. Well, if you want to reach out to Steve, you can reach him via his contact page at stevetrang.com. Hope you got some great information about, of course, the mindset of self-improvement, but more importantly, what do you need to do to build success in the wholesale business? And it sounds to me like Steve is definitely a guy you should reach out to if you're looking for help on that. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next episode. Take care.
You've been listening to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had fun. Make sure to visit our Apple Podcast page and leave us a 5-star review. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. For real estate coaching, events, and resources, hit up bulletproofcashflow.com. Till next time.
No information in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this show are limited to accredited or sophisticated investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure and subscription documentation and subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice.